What's up, everybody? I'm Dave Gates. This is the Solo Musician Podcast, and this is episode number 5. I love history. It really doesn't matter what history most of the time. Just I love old things. I love old buildings. I love old relics. I love old guitars. I love the story that's behind all of those things and where they came from and how they got to this current state that they're in. And I found myself the other day whenever I was trying to think of show topics, I found myself realizing how little I knew about the origins of solo musicians. So, like most other things, I ended up doing like a deep dive, trying to figure out everything I could find out about the origins of solo musicians. From the troubadours of medieval courts to the current stars, solo stars that are on these global stages. The pursuit of individual expression through that entire time period. So today I'm going to give you a recap or a snapshot of all the things that I learned, and a lot of this may be wrong. So fact check it if you're really that worried about it. But I promise this will be at least mildly entertaining and should be mostly factual and will at least give you a somewhat of an idea of the history of solo musicians. All right, so I'm going to kick things off on this in the medieval era. I'm sure that there was more solo musicians before that. I'm sure there was a lot of guys playing music or telling jokes or doing whatever before the medieval era, but that's where I started my research. So I can't speak to anything before that. So during the medieval era, there were troubadours and minstrels, okay? These were solo performers, and they were frequently retained by royalty and high society. So they would be retained by a court to play exclusively for that area, and they kind of wouldn't really venture out much, okay? They would just kind of play for them. As the courts became more sophisticated, minstrels were eventually replaced at courts by the troubadours. And many of those minstrels that were no longer playing in the courts became what were referred to as wandering minstrels, pretty much street performers. And these groups of musicians were around and very prominent through the end of the 15th century, before they started to kind of decline. Wandering minstrels were like the regular folks. They were common street musicians with no social status that traveled around, playing music, telling jokes, making people happy with their songs or their basic stand-up comedy routines, right? Think of them as like the light workers during the Dark Ages, okay? They were known to use stringed instruments like lutes and viols, but were often observed adding percussion to enhance their performances as well. They were cheer spreaders, okay? They traveled from village to village, just entertaining anybody who would listen. One of the unique things about wandering minstrels was that they weren't just restricted to playing villages. They could go in and out of the courts to entertain people at courts as like kind of a sideshow freak compared to the troubadours that were there, which were a little bit more highbrow, but we'll get into them in a second. The fact that they could move in and out of different communities gave them a unique opportunity to act as a bridge between those. So not just sharing entertainment, but like cultural insights across regions as well, which is in stark contrast of troubadours. So troubadours, on the other hand, were like the highbrow musicians from the rich people's club, okay? They wrote and sang fancy poems and songs about love and knights and heroes and songs about being quote unquote proper in society. That sounds like fun music. Instead of traveling around like the minstrels did among a diverse crowd, they hung out in the courts of rich people, playing boring songs to boring people. No, that's a personal inflection. These upper class artists were into meaningful poetry and music, and played instruments like lutes and harps, among a lot of others. Not really known to use percussion quite as much, but definitely did as well. Both minstrels and troubadours were very important because they told stories that helped keep history alive and culture alive back then. So you're thinking, at the time, most of the people, they couldn't read or write. So songs and poems and spoken word performances were the only way they gained knowledge of current events. I'd like to think a lot of that still holds true now with the larger solo artists that are out there. They can bring a highlight or spotlight to a certain issue that isn't really being talked about, or that people haven't heard about from other sources, and then they hear about it from their favorite musician. So, it's interesting to see where that started. It seems in some ways like it started as a way to deliver the current news in an entertaining fashion, so people would actually listen. All right, let's move on to the classical era of music. The classical era spanning from roughly the mid-18th to early 19th century, and for anybody who doesn't know what that means, it's from like 1750 to 1820. Okay? It marked a changing time for solo musicians, and they were transforming into iconic figures and kind of centralizing their role in the world of classical music. The piano and violin were usually the primary instrument for the soloist during this period, and whenever I heard that, I couldn't help but think how hard it would be to rely on like a full-size piano before the invention of keyboards. Could you imagine having to load up a piano into your wagon or like tow one behind your horse to get to a gig? Like, what shape would that piano be in when you got there? And is it going to be in tune? How is that even possible? And I might be an idiot. Maybe they had one there. Maybe they were like, we didn't bring pianos. I don't know. But I like to think about it. Composers and performers from this era, such as like Mozart, Beethoven, and Hummel, they all showcased individual skill, technique, artistic expression, and the ability to look like they were like 100 years old when they were 20. So a weird fact about Beethoven that maybe not a lot of people know, he verified the amount of individual coffee beans that were used to roast his cup of morning joe every morning to verify that there were exactly 60. He would count them every day to make sure there were 60. I don't know how that helped him at all, but it may be just the exact amount that you need to lose your hearing in your 20s. So these musicians were not just interpreters of complex pieces, they were composers themselves. They crafted melodies that showcased their individual abilities and emotional depth. For example, when Mozart played his piano concertos, or concertos, I'm an idiot, guys. I don't have any musical education. I'm going to say concertos. Concertos, that feels good. That's what she said. It was like a playful conversation between his piano and the orchestra. In Beethoven's violin sonatas, you could hear a beautiful back and forth between the violin and the background piano. This shift made solo musicians more important. They could now stand out, showcasing their individual talents and emotions, and get groupies, like lots and lots of groupies. So, in addition to the evolution of the solo artists, the classical era started a shift in the perception of musicians. Soloists like Mozart weren't only esteemed composers, but also very, very charismatic performers. Their ability to communicate with audiences through their instruments elevated the solo musician to a status of celebrity, with concerts becoming social events attended by pretty much the elite of society. They changed how music was made and performed, and they set the stage for solo musicians to jar you out of your meal with their rendition of Wagon Wheel at restaurants everywhere today. Like whenever you're sitting there and you're like, I'm just going to have this burger tonight, burger and fries, no problem. We're just going to get out of this bar. And then you hear, and you're like, God damn it. Really? Right now? Right now? During this meal? Damn you, Beethoven. All right. Moving on. So we're going to move on now to the folk, blues, and jazz pioneers of the 19th and 20th century. Okay? During the 19th and 20th century, the world witnessed the emergence of exceptional solo musicians in the realms of folk, blues, and jazz, each genre contributing distinct voices to the diverse catalog of musical history. In the folk tradition, solo musicians played a pivotal role in preserving and spreading cultural messages, much like the troubadours and minstrels of before, okay? Artists like Woody Guthrie and Pete Seeger, armed with just their acoustic guitars, told stories of the common people. Struggles, injustices, life's problems, they were all addressed with beautiful melodies in the background. Their solo performances often resonated with broad audiences across social norms and captured the essence of social and political movements. So, power to the people, right? Folk music is cool. It still continues to be cool. And it's very progressive. Those guys are blazing trails out there. So this was kind of the start of folk music. In the blues genre, solo musicians took listeners on a journey of raw emotion and personal expression. Legends like Robert Johnson, with his haunting vocals and very, very sophisticated guitar work, created a profound impact on the musical scene at the time. On a side note, Robert Johnson's voice wasn't the only haunting part about him. There are long-held rumors of his involvement with the occult that exist to this day. Rumors that he sold his soul to the devil in exchange for musical stardom and an eventual ticket to the 27 Club. We'll definitely cover more of that in another episode, but today's not the day. So let's get back to blues. Blues really expanded the path for solo musicians. The personal and heartfelt format of blues allowed all musicians to kind of delve into their own experiences, conveying a depth of feeling that connected with listeners on a more human level. They carried pain and sadness on the backs of chords and lyrics during a time when merely existing day to day would be considered a struggle. So let's move on to jazz. So jazz, with its free-flowing and loosely structured nature, provided a very fertile ground for solo expression. Pioneers like Louis Armstrong and Charlie Parker showcased their incredible versatility through solo performances, really pushing the boundaries of musical innovation at the time. Jazz sprung up from the creativity of African-American slaves who weren't allowed to maintain their original musical traditions. So they created a musical style of their own, a musical composition that couldn't be controlled by the man. For that reason, jazz was commonly viewed as a threat to the very fabric of society. But for the people that connected with its nonconformist nature, it felt like they finally had a voice, like they had their own story. Thus, the soloist in jazz became an outlaw storyteller, explaining complex rhythms and harmonies with individual flair. Their bravery to create and go against social norms gave courage to countless solo musicians to feel confident in expressing themselves in non-traditional ways. These solo musicians from this time, spanning from the dusty trails of folk to the smoky clubs of blues and the vibrant stages of jazz, left a permanent mark on music. Through their mastery of solo expression, they not only helped to shape the structure of their individual genres, but they also continue to inspire countless musicians who have followed in their footsteps today. Their influence reminds us of the power and beauty of solo expression in the ever-evolving landscape of music. So they're very, very important. I went through a large period of my life where I listened to a lot of smooth jazz, like 92.7 there in here. Smooth jazz, 92.7, or whatever they do. That was a great radio station back then. But I love all sorts of music, and jazz and funk and blues. They all have this great spot in the Rolodex of music that I listen to. So, all right, let's move on. Singers, songwriters of the folk revival. Okay, this is like the mid-20th century. The mid-20th century marked the golden age of singer-songwriters. Artists displayed their souls through powerful and relatable lyrics and acoustic melodies. Icons like Bob Dylan, Joni Mitchell, Leonard Cohen, they all emerged as solo storytellers, using their guitars and pens to spread social and political messages. I don't know if you're seeing a pattern here, but it's like the social movements and political movements they coincide with the musicians that spread the message, or write the songs about them, or talk about them, or take them to task, okay? It seems like that's an interwoven part of history of solo musicians. This emergence of singer-songwriters marked a departure from the earlier dominance of big bands and manufactured pop acts. At the exact same time, in the realm of popular music, artists like Carole King, Paul Simon, and James Taylor hit the scene. Their ability to craft introspective lyrics, coupled with memorable melodies, resonated with large audiences at home and abroad. Carole King's Tapestry album, for instance, became a landmark work, showcasing the power of a single singer-songwriter's ability to connect with listeners just completely on a personal level. It felt intimate and authentic while still being able to be considered commercially acceptable. These mid-20th century singer-songwriters ushered in a new era of artistic freedom, influencing the next generation of musicians. Their impact extended way beyond their solo performances. They shaped the path of the music industry and inspired a large array of artists who followed in their footsteps. The legacy of these singer-songwriters carries on to this day, and it's a testament to the power of a single individual armed with a guitar and a story to tell. The folk revival movement elevated the solo artist as a singular poetic voice, connecting all of the masses through very intimate performances. All right, let's carry on. We're moving into the late 20th century now, okay? We have pop icons and solo superstars, and the late 20th century marked an explosive era for solo musicians where literally individual artists took center stage. This period witnessed the rise of iconic solo performers who not only dominated the Billboard charts, but also became cultural icons. They swayed and shifted public opinion on fashion and societal issues in ways that previous solo musicians never could have imagined. And yes, you would be correct. This is another group of musicians who have shaped societal issues or talked about cultural issues. It seems to be our thing. In the realm of rock, David Bowie emerged as a larger-than-life figure. His ever-changing personas and experimental sounds challenged those conventional norms of rock music. Bowie's incredible ability to reinvent himself and explore new musical territories made him a solo artist that could captivate audiences across genre boundaries. Ground control to Major Tom, or whatever. All right, let's carry on. Pop music at that time was full of superstars. And Madonna, the queen of pop, redefined the notion of a solo artist. Her ability to push artistic boundaries resonated with audiences worldwide as well. I still remember her cone brawl blowing my mind when I was a teenager. Madonna's impact extended far beyond music and what she chose to hold her boobs in, and she became a cultural icon. She shaped a lot of trends in fashion and music videos. She still performs today, and her heavily plasticized face is something that should give you the heebie-jeebies. It definitely does me. You should Google it. Change your life. All right. Whitney Houston. Whitney Houston's effortless vocals made her a chart-topping sensation at that time. And Prince's genre-defying melodies and offstage presence showcased the boundless possibilities of expression. When it came to blues and soul music, Stevie Ray Vaughan and Aretha Franklin were heavily influential figures. Vaughan's mastery of the blues guitar kind of revitalized the underperforming blues genre, while Franklin's unmatched vocal abilities and emotional depth made her the undisputed queen of soul. You know, these musicians of this era, they weren't just creating music. They were crafting identities that resonated with bigger and larger and more worldwide fan bases on a personal level. They connected with people who were looking for an individual connection in a world that now had the opportunity for many. For something that didn't feel so cookie cutter or manufactured in a lab. Their influence extended beyond the realms of entertainment, shaping the cultural landscape and inspiring other musicians to explore their individuality and feel confident in finding people in the world that would want to see exactly who they are. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, I know what you might be thinking. You might be thinking that, you know, Dave, these are the big solo artists of the time. These are the guys that are in stadiums. These are the ones that are out there doing, you know, gigantic tours, and they have big backing bands behind. They're not technically solo artists, but who was Whitney Houston's keyboard player? Okay, yeah. I mean, I don't know either. So I would say that these guys were solo musicians. They were solo singers or solo performers or entertainers, much like we are now. And I would say that, you know, during that time, there was also the exact same thing that we have now. There was a bunch of guys with guitars, singers-songwriters, solo, acoustic musicians in bars playing, you know, whatever, all over the country. So they were already doing that. You know, and from everything I saw, that traces back to the 1700s or so in saloons. It might have even been a little bit prior to that. But like the real prominence of it started to kind of come around during cowboy days. So at least here in the United States, we don't have that long of a history. So that's that. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely trying to cover some of the major people who moved the solo artist forward. And that really encompasses the bigger names of the eras. Not saying that there's no other music that was out there that was awesome. So I just don't want that to get misconstrued. All right. We're going to move on now to the digital era. So this is 21st century contemporary soloists. The digital era of music is marked by the widespread use of technology and online platforms. Okay? The invention of digital recording, distribution, social media, all of that has helped solo artists find almost limitless opportunities to create and share and connect with audiences on a global scale from their home. One of the defining features of this era that we're in is the availability and affordability of music creation tools. Digital audio workstations and home audio recording equipment have given musicians the power to produce high-quality music independently, eliminating the need for elaborate studio setups or expensive studio time. Not that that doesn't have its place, but you don't have to have that to take your ideas to the world now. This accessibility has led to a surge in really diverse voices and genres, as artists can experiment freely without the constraints of traditional recording processes or label interference. Online platforms such as streaming services and social media have become valuable tools in shaping the careers of solo musicians. Artists can release their music directly to a worldwide audience, reaching listeners without any constraints. I do that quite a bit. Well, I used to. Not so much anymore. I don't get as much time with all the 5 trillion projects I'm doing. But I used to, if I would write a song, I'd take like a 30-second clip or something and I'd put it online. If there was any interest, I'd write the song. I'd write the song and I'd record it all at home. I didn't have to go anywhere. And then I'd usually shoot that to my producer, to Kevin, and be like, hey, man, what can we do with this? And then we would do like a big production with him, but I could have a demo to give people right away that afternoon. So that is a gigantic difference from solo musicians from before. Platforms like Spotify, YouTube, and SoundCloud, they also enable us to build fan bases, gain attention, and even generate some income through digital distribution. Social media has completely transformed the way that solo musicians engage with their audience. Platforms like Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, they all provide direct channels for artists to share their creative process, connect with fans, and build a personal brand. This direct interaction has blurred the lines between artist and audience, creating a further sense of intimacy and community between the two. I love the fact that I can talk directly to the people that come to my shows online, or the people that just consume my online content, or whoever. I love the fact that I can just get on, and for social media has a million faults, but one thing that's awesome is the ability to just connect individually with someone that you wouldn't have the opportunity to outside of that. So that's awesome, especially for like my overseas fans and anybody. Like, this podcast gets listened to a lot in Chicago for some reason. So hello, Chicagoans. Yeah, we'll do that. So, but I would never get to talk to them if it wasn't for social media. So moving on, the digital era also reshaped the concept of live performances. While you'll definitely still see a person in like a bar or a restaurant with a guitar or piano belting out all your favorite stuff, virtual concerts and live streams have also gained popularity. And that allows musicians to connect with global audiences in real time, like as a live performance while they're in their pajamas and you're in your pajamas. So, that shift has not only provided new avenues for performance and income for the artists, but it also offered fans unique and personable experiences from the comfort of their own homes. I mean, a ticket to a concert is bonkers right now. I don't have to tell you. But, if you can save $150 and watch that person online and give them $100 or something and not have to deal with parking or any of those things, and you just want to see them perform in a live way, feel like you're there, it's a great option. Maybe not for the big bands, because then it's just like you're just watching them perform and they're not even paying attention to you. But for us smaller guys, for solo musicians, man, there's nothing like it. A lot of times I play in like pajama bottoms with a t-shirt on or a button-down shirt on. Usually I'm not wearing appropriate pant attire. Does that make sense? I'd like to be comfortable. So, but that's usually how I do it, and it's nice. It's nice. Nobody would have ever known that, but there you go. All right. The history of solo musicians is a rich and vibrant history, and I encourage you to explore it on your own. From troubadours serenading medieval courts to the pop icons commanding stadium-size audiences today, the solo artist has remained a powerful and individual expression of music. When people seek out an individual musician, they're looking for that personal connection. A connection to their music, to their lyrics, to their energy, maybe even to their views on everyday life. As solo musicians, our history is one of bringing entertainment to people in need of being entertained, whether that's in the neighboring village or the corner of a local bar. We bring people together for a little bit of fun in a world that can sometimes be too heavy to enjoy. I'm grateful every single day that I get to walk in the shoes of minstrels and Mozarts, feeling free to express myself any way I feel fit. So thanks to all the trailblazers, and thank you for listening to the narrative part of today's podcast. Going to get to some other stuff here shortly. I hope you learned something useful, even if that's just that Robert Johnson made a deal with the devil, which you could check out, or if you looked at Madonna's plasticized mug and go, let's not do that. Whatever I do in my future, that is not on my list. All right. I don't get the chance to go out too often and see live music. Don't get a chance to go out and hang out with the girlfriend or hang out with friends and just kind of consume some live performers. But I got lucky enough yesterday to go out to my first round table Irish jam band kind of thing. I'm not even sure what you would call it. It was a group of, I think at one point, 12 people, some fiddles and violins and mandolin, an Irish mandolin, and some guitars, and some dude playing bones, aka spoons. The experience in that Irish pub is something that I will never forget. The atmosphere, the company, the people that were there, the entire experience. I didn't realize at the time how much it was going to relate to this week's episode until it was over. And I realized that I had just experienced something that I talked about in the beginning of this episode. The minstrels and the way that people used to get together and sing and just be a community connected through music was on full display yesterday at the Garryowen. The way they have the room laid out there, it creates a natural amphitheater. I call it natural. It's not so much natural. It's drywall and a bunch of other stuff, but it creates this projection from this low ceiling nook in the back where the band plays, and then the ceiling just vaults from there towards the crowd, which just projects everything clear and concise the whole way to the back. We were lucky enough to not be seated in the back because Steve and Lisa had gotten a table whenever they got there. But we were sat up front, right close to the band, sitting next to the fireplace. And little known fact about me, I love fireplaces. I love sitting in front of them. I love looking at them. I like sometimes roasting hot dogs in them or burning off my eyebrows while lighting them. Enjoy that. That's a good pastime for me. But anyway, I don't think we could have had a better seat because we were right behind the band. I mean, right up against them. And with the fireplace and the band and the closeness of everybody was just kind of on top of each other there. Not in a creepy way, but in like a in like a cozy and comfortable way. That sounds even weirder. But I really enjoyed how much everybody was just having a good time. It's a Sunday afternoon in Gettysburg, and I felt like I was not in Gettysburg at all. I felt like I was in another land, maybe in Ireland. No, I definitely felt like I was outside of the United States, outside of pop music and outside of politic discussions and outside of horrible cover songs that are played over and over and over and over again. And it felt like I was transported to a place where music and community were meshing again. From what I hear, Steve and Lisa said over in Ireland that this is a normal occurrence at some of the pubs. And that when somebody starts singing, because a lot of times it was just the stringed instruments playing, but when somebody started singing, everybody shut up. Like everybody shut up in there. And a lot of them just listened. Or when it came to the chorus, people would sing along. And I mean, belted it out. And what I was even more impressed by as a musician, I mean, I'm sure it would be just as impressive to people who don't play music. Okay, so I'm not discounting that. But what I will say is, like, as a musician, when people sang along on the chorus, the women broke off into alto and soprano, and the men broke off into tenors and baritones and bass singers. It was like everybody all of a sudden was a chorus. Like everybody's choral training in school had taken over. That's what it felt like, because it was so beautiful and so all-encompassing. Like the parts all came together. And that wasn't just in vocals either. And I kept remarking to my girlfriend about how I couldn't believe there were 12 people at one point playing together. And all of them just kind of meshed off of each other. They would come in and drop out whenever they felt like it, or if they needed a sip off their pint. Like, everybody worked so synergistically. It was blowing my mind the entire time we were there. Just the fact that, and a lot of those people, from what I hear, like, they don't normally, it's not like they practice and stuff together. So this is their session together, and everybody picks a song. So they go around the table, and each person gets a chance to choose their own song. And sometimes it's just a guy and his guitar, or a lady, one of them ladies and their guitars, or, sometimes it's a duo or a trio, and then sometimes it'll start with just a guy and his guitar or just a vocal, and then it'll build to where all 12 people are playing. And some of them you can see are just watching the hands on the other side of the table to kind of figure out where the song's going. So, I mean, the whole experience had me wanting to move to Ireland. If this is a common occurrence over there where people get together and just have a good time and celebrate music and sing together and just enjoy each other's company, I mean, if that's a normal thing, put me wherever that happens. Just pick me up and transport me there. Okay? Because sometimes, as a solo musician, and other musicians are going to get this, you're in the back of these rooms and you're playing and no one cares. I post pictures or videos. Pictures wouldn't really do it justice. I post videos sometimes on YouTube, and anybody that is located overseas that comments on my videos always says the exact same thing. Why is everybody so loud? Like, do they not understand what's going on? You're performing a song. Why is everybody so loud? Right? Nobody's singing along in some of the videos that I post. It's just me trying to do, and I'm like, all right, this isn't that bad. There's a little bit of crowd noise in the background. I can use this video, but I'll put it up and they'll be like, oh my God, what's wrong? Americans are disrespectful. And I'm like, well, I mean, I didn't see it. until yesterday, whenever I was there. And I went, wow. I mean, maybe a little bit. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't talk to people when you go out to see live music. I do it. But it was interesting yesterday to see what it's like whenever the entire crowd is part of the music. Okay. I had a little bit of a taste on that Friday night at Hook and Flask. And I always get a taste of that at Hook and Flask. I was playing at Hook and Flask Distillery, Stillworks, there in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. I played there Friday night for their Ice Fest. And, the crowd there sang along most of the songs. And that was incredible. It was like our American version of what happened yesterday at the Garryowen. But instead of Fields of Athenry and Black Velvet Band, it was Sweet Caroline and Bismarcky. So it's always nice to have crowds that sing along. And I talked to Steve briefly about this because he said, the crowd at Hook and Flask, every time I'm there, is awesome. Steve didn't say that. I said that. But but he agreed. The energy in that room makes it different for me. I consider that place home base. It's my favorite place to play out of all the venues I've ever played. And it's not because of the location, even though it's pretty awesome. It's not because of the staff, even though they're great. It's not because all their drinks are incredible or any of those reasons. It's because the crowd is the best crowd every time. So I have good crowds other places, and that's what I told Steve sets Hook and Flask apart, is that I have great crowds kind of everywhere I go. Not every place has an awesome crowd, but they have the potential to have one. And sometimes I don't have great ones. Sometimes I have incredible ones that sing along and they're interactive and they request songs and they go wild. The one thing about Hook and Flask is that happens every single time I play there. So, and it's like I play there every other month. So every other month I get to come home to the crowd that I love, to the audience that participates and they get all fired up and they get crazy. I love that. More than anything, I love a crowd that sings along, because then it feels like we're in it together, right? It feels like we're all doing the music thing together that night. And I'm not just doing it towards you. We're participating in it together like a community. And you know what? I got presented a very unique opportunity yesterday at the Irish pub. I mentioned Black Velvet Band a couple minutes ago, and Black Velvet Band is a song by the Dubliners that is a very cool song because like most Irish music, the chorus is a sing-along. A lot of people know the words to it, and the different parts to it. So a lot of people sing along. And Lisa had asked me earlier when we got there if I would be interested at all in getting up there and playing with the Irish jam band, on a song. And I pretty much immediately turned it down. And it wasn't so much a rejection of wanting to do it. It was my voice was a little sore after 3 gigs, and like the night before I hadn't taken any breaks at Antietam, so it was like 3 hours and 15 minutes or so straight through. So my throat was a little sore, and I was, worried that was gonna complicate things. But also, a lot of times when I go out to see people play, I get asked to play. So like I'll go out and see one of my friends play and they'll be like, hey, do you want to get up here and do a song? And most of the time I just say no. And it's not anything against them. It's just kind of that I'm coming out to see them play. So I initially turned it down. And then, as the day went on and we were listening to everybody play and sing, and it was so beautiful. And, there was a lot of times I looked over and my girlfriend was just glued to watching these people perform, because she's a musician too. She's a singer. So she was just glued to the voices and all of the instruments that were being played. And I kind of sat there and thought for a second that if I didn't get up and sing with them, I was going to regret it. So after another Guinness and a red breast, I was ready, I guess. I don't know why I got nervous. I never get nervous to perform. And I don't mean that in a conceited way or arrogant way, but I love what I do. There is no reason for me to be nervous. I've practiced and prepared for performing. That's enough P's for one sentence. So stage fright just normally isn't an issue. But yesterday it was in full effect yesterday. And I don't know if that was sitting close to the fireplace or drinking the Guinness or whatever it was, had me sweating profusely while I was up there playing. Sorry to whoever's guitar that was. But I got up and did Black Velvet Band. And if you're interested in checking it out, I'm going to try to put it in the show notes, but it'll also be on the Solo Musician Podcast Facebook page. So to be posted on there as well. But I got up there and I had my lyrics on my phone, on my leg. So I was just trying to not knock my phone off my leg the whole time. But I played the guitar and then I would say about, you'll see it in the video, I would say about, 10 seconds in, first fiddle joined in, and then another one, and then a violin, and then a guitar player, and then a little bit of percussion. So by the end, we had a full band going on a song that I didn't want to get up and do. We had a room singing along with that song. We were all one in that moment, like experiencing that together. And, I outlined earlier, that's one of my favorite things about music is connection and the power of it to bring people together, right? The power to create community through music, to commune, to just be in each other's presence and soak up that energy. And it was cool to be part of the moment yesterday too, and to not let myself really get in the way of that. Just to say yes yesterday to experience that. So it was such a beautiful thing. And thank you to Steve and Lisa for inviting us out for the afternoon. We'll be there again. We're going to go back in a month probably, but thank you to the Garryowen too for even hosting something like that people can go be a part of. Those kind of live music venues are very, very, not that other ones are not important, but those ones are very important. The ones that, feed the musicians basically. Because you could tell all of those musicians that were playing were not worried about what they were getting paid. They were there. They had smiles on their faces. They were having a great time. They were just happy to be there. And that is such an awesome, awesome thing to see. So thank you to Garryowen. Also, just wanted to cover, so last week's Thursday Thoughts was about the Central Pennsylvania Music Hall of Fame Awards, and my thoughts on those, and got a ton of feedback, tried to start a movement to push some sort of fan vote, and we'll see where that goes. I mean, I think that some people got my thoughts very, very, very misconstrued. I think that some people don't understand respectfully what they're talking about. I'm not calling for a 100% fan vote. I'm asking why it is that the fan vote doesn't matter. Okay, because it doesn't. And, it says right on their FAQs that the fan vote only comprises a small portion, a very small portion, I think is the verbiage that was used, but I've seen it in other places posted that the fan vote, it only counts a minute amount because they don't want it to be a popularity contest. At least not one judged by other people, just by whoever they think is the most popular or checks boxes or does the most to promote the Central Pennsylvania Music Hall of Fame. So if you don't get on there and talk about this, and you don't get on there and tell people that you're nominated for an award, and you don't get on and engage your audience telling them, it doesn't make a difference. Okay? That's why, like, right now, everybody that's nominated that I know has put, like, hey, fan voting is open for the next 9 days or something. So their CPMA's post about the fan voting being open got shared 650 times. Okay? 650 times. So that means that they got an exposure of probably metrics, 100,000 people, 50 to 100,000 people that they've reached through that post. So it's good for them. It's great for them, but it means nothing for the artist. It means nothing if your fans vote, because it's not going to be taken into account. Okay. And that's my problem with these awards. And that's one of my issues with them, is the fact that the people that are deciding who the best musicians are in the area, a lot of them don't even go see live music, okay? Or if they do, they see the same bands over and over, or whatever. I mean, just look at the nominee list, and you can see that it's the same bands year after year after year, when there's other bands in that category that are left out year after year after year that are at least on the same level as those other bands, but they don't promote CPMAs or the Music Hall of Fame, so they don't get included. And I think that's wrong. I think that is not a snapshot of the best in the area then. I think you're getting whoever the judges have the best name recognition of, or whoever they think is arbitrarily the best in the area, having not gone to see any shows. If, like I said, if you take a look at the nominee list, there's some acts on there that I personally have seen clear rooms. I've seen them come in, play 4 or 5 songs, and bars empty out. So how those acts end up in the consideration for best of their category is beyond me. So that's my problem. That's my issue with not having a fan vote. Maybe not 100%. Or definitely not 100%, because I don't want it to be a popularity contest. But 50% fan vote, 60% fan vote, and then the board or advisory committee just goes, okay, did this person release an album? Did this person have an active schedule? Did this person actually play a lot of gigs in 2021? This year. So did this person actually play a lot of gigs? For 2023, were they active on social media? Did they do charity events? You could have a full checklist to go through, so that way somebody couldn't just come on the scene and be like, well, I have 100,000 followers that I paid for or whatever, and now I'm the best. So you all need to recognize it. It would keep that from happening. So I just don't understand what they're scared of. I mean, scared that they might get some acts in there that don't promote them, or scared that they might get some acts in there that may deserve to be there more than people that like blatantly advertise for the Music Hall of Fame. I'm not sure what they're scared of with the fan vote. It's not a popularity contest. It's the people of the area that are consuming the music that you're judging the best of. So maybe you should take their opinion a little bit. I don't think that that's a fringe sentiment. I don't think that that's something on the outside. And I apologize to anybody that's listening outside of the central Pennsylvania area that is like, why is he even talking about this? I just felt like it's something that needs to be talked about. I have a lot of musicians in the area that listen to this podcast or reach out and talk to me. The support right now is unreal for some kind of change, because a lot of musicians that used to look at this as an award to kind of work towards and something to achieve and something to actually value have turned their backs on it as it's like another corrupt organization. It's a pay for play, or a you scratch our back, we'll scratch yours kind of situation. And that's what it's starting to feel like. And I think that they have time to rectify that situation still by giving some power back to the fans and not telling them that they don't matter. And that's where I'll leave that this week. Thank you guys so much for listening today and sharing this with your friends. If you found anything that you learned today that was awesome, drop it in the comments. If I got anything wrong or everything that I got wrong, drop that in the comments. It might take a little while, but just I'd love to hear about it. Also, anytime you guys have feedback or if you have show topics, next week's show, episode 6, is going to be the People's Choice episode. I'm going to post about that on Wednesday. I'm going to post a comment thread for you guys to comment your subjects or topics you want me to talk about. And I'm going to do an entire show just based off of what you want to hear about. Okay. And it can be anything. And as long as it's not too graphic, I'll just comment on it. All right. So that's going to be episode 6. And like I said, I'm going to drop that on the Facebook page on Wednesday. And then you guys can comment your thoughts on there. A lot of big things happening in the background this week that might be changing some things when it comes to my live music schedule, but we'll see what happens with that. No reason to freak out yet. Also, wanted to say thank you to Shy Bear up in Lewistown, Pennsylvania, Hook and Flask, of course, and Antietam for letting me play last weekend. All the shows were awesome, really well attended. I love Antietam. I could do a whole podcast on that place at some point, and I'm sure I will. But thank you to all of them for having me this weekend. And I'll have more about this week's upcoming shows on my Thursday Thoughts episode for this week. That'll be dropping at midnight on Thursday. So thank you guys again for checking in. Please share this with your friends, and I will see you on Thursday.